Alright, let's talk about capacity. Certainly have to have capacity to enter into a contract. You have minors, intoxication, and mental incompetence. Alright, minors. These generally are children under the age of 18, and they cannot enter into contracts. Okay? But there are exceptions. Certainly a child is emancipated, or a child is contracting for necessities that their parents aren't providing. This would be an example of an exception to the general rule. But generally, you have to be 18 or over to enter into a contract. Intoxication. The contract is voidable at the discretion of the person who's intoxicated. Okay? So if you're drunk in Athens, never happens, then the contract is voidable as to you. Also being mentally incompetent. Alright? If a person has been adjudicated incompetent, the contract is void. Now, if a person has not been adjudicated incompetent, but they are incompetent, they can have what we call a lucid moment. And at that particular point, they can enter into a contract, but it's going to depend on all the surrounding circumstances. Also, contracts have to be legal. Alright? Contracts contrary to statute or contract to commit a crime is in violation of law. Okay, so we cannot enter into a purchase and sale agreement for marijuana. Sorry. So if you have a contract to sell some marijuana and they don't buy it, you can't sue them. You can try, you'll go to jail, but Usury statute. This is a statute that sets the maximum rate of interest that can be charged for different types of transactions, including ordinary loans. Rules like this are why credit cards are in certain places, because they have higher usury laws. Gambling. Yeah, again, sorry, not legal. Anything that involves the distribution of property by chance among persons who have paid valuable consideration or the opportunity to receive the property is gambling. Right? Licensing statutes. Members of certain professions must have a license allowing them to practice. Doctors, lawyers, beauticians, barbers. Next time you go and see your doctor, why don't you ask them about their medical school GPA? Yeah, it doesn't matter. They were licensed. Basically, licensing is done for taxing purposes and to protect the public, because certainly we want all of our professionals to meet certain minimum state requirements. All right, contracts contrary to public policy. Contracts in restraint on trade. They affect public policy. Covenant not to compete is an exception. Covenants not to complete are sort of interesting. Basically what this is it's you enter into a contract, and in the event that you are discharged, you aren't allowed to go and compete with the business. Or if you sell a business, there may be a provision in the contract that says you can't open up another store next door. Okay? So they're kind of funny. Sometimes they're enforceable, sometimes they're not. It's going to depend on the reasonableness of it. Unconscionable contracts. I love this. So unscrupulous or ungrossly unfair as to be void for conscience. Folks, this is a contract that is so one-sided that no reasonable person would enter into the contract. Alright? You have procedural unconscionability and substantive unconscionability. Procedural has to do with how a term becomes part of a contract and involves factors that make it difficult for a party to know or understand the contract terms. Inconspicuous print, the fine print at the bottom of the page, or using too many legalese, or lack of opportunity to read. Any of these could lead to a procedural unconscionability. An adhesion contract is arguably an example. A contract written by one party and presented to the other to take it or leave it basis. Now, these are kind of tricky, but it goes to whether or not it was reasonable. Substantive unconscionability. Contracts that are oppressive or overly harsh, and it's got to be way out there. Exculpatory clauses that release a party from liability in the event of monetary or physical injury, no matter who is at fault. And you will see these types of exculpatory clauses throughout contracts.